Hey everyone, good afternoon again. Thank you all for joining in today's webinar. So in today's webinar, we're going to get introduced to CMDB in the cloud version of ServiceDesk Plus. Now, this is a pre-webinar for the feature that's going to be released in the cloud version of ServiceDesk. Now, this is just to keep you all updated about what's happening. And once the feature is released into it's a cloud version, it's going to be like right there notifying you about the new feature. So we just wanted to make sure it's not a surprise and you're also aware like, okay, so this is what we learned a while ago. And you can also sign up for the other webinar that would be conducted after the release. That's after the release. So this would be really beneficial for you to get a update on what's coming up. And once it's released, you could like learn more as well on this. Perfect. So I'm going to walk you through of what CMDB is and how it's going to be beneficial in ServiceDesk Plus. So what is CMDB? A CMDB is a configuration management database. Is a database that contains all relevant information about hardware and software components used in an organization's IT services, along with the relationships between those components. Now, what are these components? These components are CIs, maybe a single module such as a monitor or hard drive, or more complex items such as a complete system. So this is what the CMDB and CI is all about. Now, if you look at this particular schema, it talks about the individual CIs, an employee, a department, physical server, virtual server, application. So they are all single entities that an organization holds. Now, these entities not really need to be towards hardware or not really needs to be towards users and departments, but they are all supporting components. But based on business, this varies. It could be the service the organization offers, like email or access to files and folders, hardware, the facility services, or the HR service the organization offers. So it could be anything. So these are all like individual silos. What connects them is the relationships between them. Because invariably, a employee in the organization belongs to a department where the department is managing a couple of applications, which in turn is installed on a physical or a virtual server. So this is about how the relationship goes. So even though CMDB is a centralized database which holds all information, this information is classified into CIs, which in turn are related to each other. So this is how the CMDB and the relationships help to nurture the CMDB. Now, what in CMDB helps the organization? So how CMDB helps the organization? Now, it helps you to maintain a single record of all entities in its infrastructure. As I said, the entities in the infrastructure need not be only towards the assets and the users. Anything that the organization feels is business critical and I wanted to maintain at one place so I can get a larger picture that goes into CMDB. Identify relationships between various entities of its IT infrastructure. So that's what we saw a while ago. Get a comprehensive view of associated requests and changes. Now, here is where CMDB is getting in tandem with the other modules, like or other areas of requests and changes, so that people are aware how many issues are there, or people are aware that what are the currently happening changes. So that's important. And finally, minimize recurring issues and proactively manage IT assets. So end of the day, if you look at the larger picture, the assets or the service that's been offered, there are issues that's coming up over there. Now, when you have a tight CMDB showing up with relationships, it helps you to minimize the issues and prevent the recurring issues. Like it helps you to maintain a very proactive system. Now, the CMDB in ServiceDesk Plus. So far we have seen the definition of CI, CMDB, the relationship, how it actually works. Now, what do we have in ServiceDesk Plus? So what you're looking at is a schematic representation of how different entities in the organization is put together in CMDB and how the relationship is framed. So from the left-hand side towards the right-hand side, it explains about how the server is connected to a backup server, which also says like what's the service it hosts, which location it's placed in, what are the other server that's uh, connected to it, Peter James, the user who manages this particular service, then on which rack the service placed, what database it connects, and where on the building or on the office structures it's been placed. So this is a schematic representation of CMDB from ServiceDesk Plus. Now, how does CMDB work with IT service management modules? Now, if you look at this, ServiceDesk CMDB works with incident management where it tracks history of all incidences reported on an asset. So this is really important. So when I'm raising an incident, I should be able to associate those particular assets on which I'm reporting this incident. So I get a history of all incident tickets with me. Likewise, for change management, in today's IT world, the challenge IT organizations face is about getting the change management registered and implemented correctly. Now, where does the problem fall into? When you're working on a change, you need to approve or you need to take a decision on a change. You need to have the complete impact of that particular change, which means I'm upgrading an operating system or a server, or I'm changing the firewall policies. I need to know there are no loose ends. I need to make sure that the entire entities around that particular item has been addressed. So that's where CMDB comes into change. And asset management finally is about in-depth analysis of all dependent entities, including the service, the user, the location where the assets are, and other business functions. So this is how CMDB ties with the other ITSM modules and IT asset management modules in ServiceDesk Plus. Now, the key elements of a CMDB. So what are the key elements that put together the CMDB? First is the configuration items. So they are all the entities in your IT infrastructure. So what are these entities? What could they be? It could be a department, laptop, or any asset, CRM applications, or any business services, Santa Teresa like users that you have in your organization, all files and folder access. So these are a couple of examples. So this could actually vary based on how your business is. If it's a facilities-based organization, or if your help desk is towards facilities, or if your help desk is towards HR process management. So you could have your entities accordingly. Then CI types. So classification that places CIs into functional groups. Now, if you look at it, all my different departments, I'm grouping it into one CI type called department. Likewise, different type of users, I classify them users, assets, and services. So that's about the CI types. Now, relationships. So to connect different CIs, I need the right relationship. So it's about definition of a relationship between two entities, which is two CIs. So if we put all of this together, the relationship goes as explaining how Windows operating system 2012 installed on a server that hosts a CRM application and business service such as email and is managed by IT team. So this is where different CIs are put together explaining how the relationship is. Now, implementing a CMDB in your ITSM process using ServiceDesk Plus. So now you have been working with incident tickets or service tickets, change tickets. Now, this is where we are going to also fit in CMDB and see how that fits in. So we're going to take an example. How migration from Windows 2012 to the latest operating system is easy using the CMDB. Now, here is where you're going to see you're going to create a change because you're upgrading the operating system, and also you're going to work with assets, software, and you're also going to work with other entities which are parts and pieces of this particular process and see how it works. Now, this is our scenario. This is a sample, but the situation is you need a detailed plan for upgrading all servers running Windows 2012 to the latest operating system. Now, when I say detailed plan, it has to have more specifics, such as uh, what are all the other entities it has, what are all the other components, the teams that using this particular assets, the teams that manages these services, who are the owners. So there are a lot of entities that we have to figure out. So that's the situation we are in. But what challenge can it pose to us? Or what are the challenges that IT could face or the business could face? Getting to know the blind spots and the areas impacted by a failure, because you need to cover every single area that is important with regards to that particular process. If not, you would be ending up with blind spots. Now, that's going to be challenging when you're going to implement it, because the change decision is made exactly based on the impact, which is what CMDB is supposed to give us. So we need to ensure there's no blind spots, and make sure there is no single point of failure. So that's really important, because change is where you plan for the backout plan, you plan for how the changes to be rolled out. So working with the CMDB along with the change will make sure that there is no single point of failure. So how it's done? So in an ideal situation, how it is done: tackle business critical 2012 servers first. Identify the server specification, owner, and associated components. So we have to figure all the assets that we are going to handle with, and its identification, the users or the owners, and the components that's associated. Frame relationships between the servers, components, owners, departments, between the relevant entities, to be very precise, in your CMDB. Then make sure that there is no single point of failure, like how these entities are connected, how in case failure of one, the other comes up, or how you route it to the other. So you mark that as well. And in CMDB, it's really important to get the details of what are the current incidences or the past tickets that's been raised. Are there any active changes? So this is really important. So only then, even though you have the relationships framed, when you're creating an incident or a change ticket, you need to ensure you choose these particular CI so that the decision making is very easy, so that no one is doing a duplicate task of working on the same issue all over again. So this is how it's done in order to get a proper CMDB implemented. How to build an effective CMDB using ServiceDesk Plus. So we are going to get into demo, look at the product, and see how it's done in an idle situation. So here is the cloud version of ServiceDesk Plus. Now, most of you would have got used to all these modules that's here: request, problem, changes. And once CMDB is released, you will get access to the CMDB tab over here. Now, this will be available in the Enterprise Edition. So the moment users who are in the Enterprise Edition, the moment this feature is released, you're going to get access to this particular tab, and you're going to see CMDB right over there. Now, how does the CMDB work, and what does it have for us? So if I go into the CMDB tab, on the left-hand side, you're going to get a couple of these default CI types that get shipped along with the product. Now, these CI types could be anything, is what we have been discussing throughout. It could be anything what the business needs. It not specifically needs to be towards users and assets. It could be components about the service the organization runs, the service the organization provides to the other users within the business, outside the business, the things that you have hired for the business. Anything can go into CMDB. So just make sure you have everything that is required on your CMDB. Now, when it comes to assets, ServiceDesk has the provision to scan the assets, but this means that not all these assets that you scan is going to be part of CMDB. Now, my situation today is about getting my Windows 2012 operating systems migrate to the latest. So for which, even before I perform that particular activity, I need to make sure I have my data in my CMDB and then work way from there. So what I'm supposed to do, my assets are all scanned. It's right there in my asset repository. I go to CMDB and I need to make sure my correct assets are in place. So I go to computers, servers, workstations. I go to server. There's this Windows Server. So I use this feature called mark as CI. What it refers to is it directly refers that not all assets are part of CMDB, which means I can pick and choose. So I click on mark as CI. I choose the source module as asset, and I'm saying my destination CI type is Windows Server. I click on next. Over here, it gives me a detailed option to like manually pick the asset and move them right into my CMDB. So this way, from my source, which is the asset module, I can move it to the corresponding destination in CMDB. And here we are. Those assets are imported. Likewise, if you just click on mark as CI again, you could see not just assets, departments, technician groups, service category, site, user, vendor. You could bring data from these different areas into CMDB under different destination CI types. Now, if you don't find the right destination over here, what are we supposed to do? We have to go to the admin tab, and here we have CMDB. So this is where you would see all the admin configuration for CMDB, and you have a couple of default items. You could create a new CI type if you find your required ones missing over there. Now we are working with hardware. If you want to track software, you could go add one, or if you want to add vendor as a CI type and import the vendor data into this, you could still do that. So I'm choosing software. I'm choosing a parent CI type. I click on save. Now I get options to add additional fields. So this you are always already aware about. So you could like drag and drop additional fields. You can frame sections. You have all your additional field related questions over here. So this way you can add the relevant attributes that's required for this particular CI. Once this is done, you can then go ahead and frame relationships. So these relationships denote that how this particular CI is related to any other CI that you're going to connect to. So if you could choose the relationship type. So it's a software. So I could say this software runs on, and I can say choose an asset. Probably I could say the software runs on a particular asset. So I'm just going to go computer. There is my server, and I wanted to go for my Windows server. So there it is. So I could say the relationship type is about runs on, and I am choosing Windows server. And then there's something called cardinality. It's nothing but I can define what is the type of relationship that this particular CI has with the other CIs. Is it going to be one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, or many-to-many? So this is how we could frame our cardinality. So this way, when I'm framing my relationships, only this amount of relationship is what I can define in the system. So I can choose my cardinality over here. I can click on save. Likewise, I can keep adding more relationships. Now, while adding relationships, we saw a whole list of relationships over here. If this is not sufficient, or you're not able to find out the exact relationship that you are looking for, you can go to the admin again and add different relationship types. Again, relationship types helps us to understand how each entities are related with each other. So we could add the required relationship types that's required to frame the CMDB process. Now, we have added our CIs from the existing modules. We have added CI types, which is not available. We have also added relationship types that is needed. We have added relationships. We have added the cardinality. It's all sorted out. So what's next? I go to my CMDB and start framing my relationships. To frame relationships, it's really simple. Uh, I'm going into the relevant asset, then I go to the relationship tab, and I can say add relationship. So I have a whole bunch of suggested relationship over here. I can choose the particular relationship, and the destination CIs would be listed. If it's already used, it's not going to be listed. And then if I wanted to build a custom relationship, it's right over here. I could go ahead and do these relationships manually. So this is where I'm going to use custom relationships where I haven't predefined on my admin configuration in the CI type. Now, I can add relationships manually one after the other for a particular CI. Now, this is how the relationship looks like. So the moment I've associated my relationships, so from this particular server, it explains me it's connected to a backup server, and this backup server is located in the US site. And from there, I could see what service it consists of. Then from this particular service, I could see what are the server assets it's connected to, who it's been managed by. So I could go on and expand my CIs, my relationships to understand what are the CIs it's related to and how are they connected with each other. I could also switch between these views for me to get a very clear picture. I could like minimize. I can sort my view the way I want so that while looking at this relationship, it gives me enough information about the impact radius of making a particular change. Now, how does this actually come into effect? So from where it originates from. If you go into the request module and you click on new incident, you get a field called CI. So on the template level itself, you could configure these CIs. You can add this CI into the form. Likewise, for a change ticket, when you're creating a change, you would get the CI field. Apart from assets involved and services affected, you get this particular field. You're going to choose all the services or all the entities that is required to be upgraded or to be considered for this particular change. So we're going to choose those required CIs. Once done, we create the change ticket. So this is how a created change ticket would look like with all the relevant CIs involved. Now, once this is done, where does this come into effect? I've created my incident or I've created my change. I've associated all my CIs. This comes into effect when I'm working on CMDB. When I go into my specific CI, there I get details of all the change and incident tickets that's been associated. Now, this gives an idea about what are the pending activities or what's currently happening over there, or was there already a change, completed change that's associated, and it's going to be another change on top of this. So that gives you enough information on not alone just the entities that the CMDB consists of, but also a tight information from the IT service management modules. So that's where associations comes into play. Now, when I'm viewing my relationships over here in CMDB, I get a whole bunch of data. So I'm actually viewing the exact relationship. And when I'm doing so, I can click on any CI and choose view details. This gives me more information saying that not just the general information about that particular CI, there are associations that says how many requests are there, how many changes are there. When we click on it, it gives us more information. So this information is required for people who work in change, because this is where I'm framing a tight relationship for my business critical entities. Now, when I say business critical, in most organizations out there, they use it for IT purpose. They want to track the server and services. So that's why we have taken this particular use case. Now, if you're using it for facilities or if you're using it for any other department where you're going to manage your CMDB, the services and its entities are going to change. So this information is really important because when a change is happening, people who can have this particular relationship in place, they can plan and execute it accordingly. So this is where CMDB comes in very handy. It's not only just for assets, it ties with other IT service management modules, IT asset management entities. So you could choose between the different type of views over here to get a picture on how the impact is going to be. So this is what ServiceDesk is going to offer very soon with the release of CMDB. Now, we've seen the demo of how you actually add data to your CMDB, how you create CI types, relationship types, associate relationships to CI types, then how it works with IT service management modules, how the relationship looks like when you have completed the association. So we have seen all of that. Now, what are the best practices for building an effective CMDB? Which means, like, if you ask me, Santosh, what's your suggestion towards your customers, or how your other customers are doing this? Identify CI types and define the relevant attributes. So identifying is the key point. Now, I tell my customers, take a paper and pencil, start writing down what is your business critical server or service, or what's your business critical function. That could be anything. So just write them down. Then configure relationships between them. So try to like map a relationship and see how it works. Verify if that's what you're looking for. Now, also make sure tie the CMDB into change management process, because end of the day, change is important, and change current problem is that people don't have that vision on what blind spots have we covered or what's going to be the impact. So we just need to make sure we tie it with change. Regularly update CI relationships and details as change receives approval. Now, where did we start? We started jotting down what are the CIs, and with the relationships, we took it into a change. While going with the change, everything was clear. There's no blind spots. There were like no single point of failure. Everything was good. But once the change is approved and completed, make sure any updates, such as like the operating system updates on a server or the hardware configuration of a server, that has to be updated so that no one would fall behind information. Or in other words, the hardware information or the software information is updated, and people don't need to like refer multiple system of records for this. And finally, integrate the CMDB with IT service management process. So make sure your CMDB does work in tandem with IT service management process. Now, with all this data, start configuring it in your ServiceDesk Plus. You would have all the information even before you like step into the system. So this way, it'll be really a cakewalk for you to add this data in, frame relationship, and tie with the IT service management process. So these are the steps in getting an effective CMDB into place. Now, I hope you've had enough information on what is going to come up and how it's going to look like. Hope you all liked it. And again, do watch out for this space. Watch out for all the updates that's coming up. Make a note so that when the release happens, you would be aware of how CMDB looks, where to start with. And if you have any questions, you can email us at hello@servicedeskplus.com. It's HELLO@servicedeskplus.com. Thank you so much and have a good day.